Today is October 19th, and if you're here for Answers and Engagement, Digital Experience Management from Curation to Delivery, you're in the right place. Welcome to the show. My name is Scott Abel, and I'll be your host today. If you hear anything that you would like to attribute to me, you can use my Twitter ID at Scott Abel. And also, today is a special event. It's a Scott and Val show. We've got Val Swisher on the line to co-host with me today. Val, are you there?
I sure am. Yippee! Scott and Val show.
Yay! I know. It's the return of Scott and Val. We're gonna have to do more of these. They're more fun than some of my usual shows. Can you tell me where you're broadcasting from today, Val?
I am in absolutely gorgeous Silicon Valley where the weather is impeccable.
Excellent. I'm live from San Francisco. We'll figure out where our compatriots are in just a second. First, I'd like to do the requisite announcements. We've got two sponsors that have brought this show to you today. First, Zoomin. Zoomin helps organizations deliver content on demand across all customer touch points quickly, easily, and precisely. Global brands like Jive, ServiceNow, Hitachi, and Cisco trust Zoomin to deliver their content to documentation portals, knowledge bases, call centers, search engines, customer communities, and devices that are part of the Internet of Things. If you'd like to learn more and maybe request a demo, you can do so at zoominsoftware.com. And our second sponsor today is Astoria. Astoria Software helps the world's most recognizable manufacturers, makers of high-tech hardware and software, medical devices, automobiles, airplanes, and all other types of discrete products with the tools and capabilities they need to build meaningful customer experiences with content. The Astoria platform provides an end-to-end solution that includes authoring, content management, delivery portals, and content rendering systems, all fully integrated and delivered to either private or public clouds. If you'd like to learn more about Astoria Software, I suggest you check them out on the web at astoriasoftware.com. So thanks to both of those companies for helping make this show possible today. And also to the Content Wrangler. So here at the Content Wrangler, we'd like to help you stay up to date on all these different information management technologies. And to do so, the best way to do it is to sign up for our insiders list. You'll get sneak peeks at new tools and invitations to events like this and discounts on in-person conferences and other exciting things. So please do so at thecontentwrangler.com. Later at the end of the show, we'll give away 5 copies of The Author Experience, one of our 7 books in our series of 12 books from XML Press, the Content Wrangler Content Strategy series. If you'd like to check that out and buy some books, which we would love, you can do so at xmlpress.net or at your favorite online retailer. Also, a few housekeeping items. You can ask questions in a text-based form by clicking the questions button on your webinar viewing panel. Those questions will be submitted to me and to Trey behind the scenes. We will prioritize them, and either Val or I will ask the presenters at the end of the session with the time remaining, whichever questions we think they can answer in the time that we have. Also, we'll have a couple polling questions, and during that time, Trey will jump onto the line and explain to you how to answer them. The answers to polling questions help the presenters better cater their presentation and help us deliver information to you afterwards, so please take a moment to do so when asked. And at the very end, if you could rate the presenter on our 5-star rating system using the feedback from the audience button, you can leave a 1 to 5-star rating, 1 being low, 5 being high quality, and the presenters really appreciate the feedback, so please do that. At the same time, while you're watching the show today, there are attachments and links available from your browser window. So while you're watching the show, you can download a copy of the presentation. You can also download some questions and answers about digital experience management that are in the PDF version of this. And, of course, if you'd like, you can watch a recording of the show. So when it's over, return to the same URL, maybe wait 5 or 10 minutes after the show, and it will magically appear as a recording that you can share and embed in other media. We hope that you do. All right, without further ado, Val and I would like to welcome our first presenter, Joe Gelb, to the line.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, Joe, where are you broadcasting from today? I never know where you are.
I'm broadcasting from Jerusalem today.
From Jerusalem, excellent. And Eric, are you on the line?
I am.
Eric, where are you broadcasting from today?
Well, I am in sunny Silicon Valley, so I've heard.
Ah, excellent. So you, Val, and I are pretty close together, and our friend on the other side of the planet. What time is it there, Joe?
It's about 8 in the evening, right around the corner.
Well, thank you for making your time available so late at night. We really appreciate it. Without further ado, I'll pass the presentation over to the two of you. Put myself on mute. Val, you'll do the same thing. We'll rejoin you at the end of the show to take questions from the audience.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks very much, Scott. Welcome, everybody, to our presentation today about answers and engagement, revolving around the digital experience management, all the way from curation all the way to the point where you're delivering and talking to your customers. We'd like to start immediately with a question. And so, Trey, if you'd guide us through poll question number 1, please.
I sure will. I'd like to welcome everybody to the show today. Our first polling question, and for those people who are watching in full screen, now that you can do that on Bright Talk, take yourself out of full screen or you won't be able to see the questions panel below your viewing panel. So do that first, and then we'd like to have everybody vote. The first question is, are you measuring yourself on your customer's experience with your content? And your answers are yes, not now, but yes within 12 months, not now, but yes within 3 years, or not now and no plans within 3 years. We're going to keep the poll open for about 30 to 45 more seconds. Eric, would you like to give us a little background on this particular question?
Certainly. So one of the things that really drives Joe and I is about how people are engaging with the content that comes from the companies that they do business with. Well, if customers are starting to engage, then are we actually measuring ourselves by how well they engage, by the customer experience? And so we think there's real value in assessing right at the top of the presentation how much of our audience is actually formally or at least in a measurable way assessing themselves on the customer experience that their own end users have with the content that they spend all day and their entire careers providing. So we think that there's some value in assessing this.
Absolutely. It looks like nearly 70% of the people are taking the top two answers. So we've got like 38% right now have said yes, that they are currently measuring themselves on their customer's experience with their content. And we have another 32% who say they're not doing it now, but they hope to, or they will be doing it within the next year. And then we have an additional 22% saying not now, but within 3 years. And only 10% say they have no plans to measure customer experience with their content.
Well, thank you very much. And now I'd like to turn a little bit over to Joe Gelb, who is going to take us through the next slide and segue from here.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Okay. So I'm pushing the button. Okay. In the past, a lot of companies, probably your companies also, competed on features, functionality, price, all of the kind of classic parameters that companies competed about and tried to distinguish themselves about. Probably not content. You probably haven't heard very many companies who try to distinguish themselves on content. But features, functionality, and price, these are the types of parameters that companies in the past were measuring themselves and distinguishing themselves and measuring themselves compared to their competitors.
So with respect to content, there are really two prevailing attitudes that I want to identify for each of us. Companies assumed and I think still operate in a great way this way, that simply building content means that users would come and read it. And that content creation really is a tax on your company's efforts to create content or to compete in the market. So in budgeting exercises, you really had content that was allocated as a cost of doing business. In fact, I still find that a lot today in the people that we talk to. They're not thinking about content in terms of an investment. They're talking about content as in a cost aspect of it.
But these days, there's a shift more and more to customer experience. So what that means is that more and more companies are trying to distinguish themselves based on customer experience and less on those classic parameters or indicators like price and features. We've seen is that companies and the product offerings in many fields, many industries, it's very difficult to distinguish on those features and those the pricing becomes more and more competitive, companies are looking to find other ways that they can distinguish themselves. What we're seeing, according to Gartner, is that about 89% in 2016 of companies are expecting to compete mostly on the basis of the customer experience. And that really means is that budgets are moving from product development and engineering, and they're moving more and more into customer experience type of budgeting and offerings. According to Forrester, 93% of corporate leaderships are placing customer experience improvement on their list of strategic priorities. So when we're talking about or comparing that with product enhancements, which comes at number 2 in employee training, both of those are important, but improvements in customer experience is becoming more and more the foreign way that executives in your companies are starting to think. So we talk about digital experience, where we're all, which we're all interested in because we're all in this webinar today, is that we're thinking more and more about, in the past when we had a website and we were taking our content and kind of throwing it over the wall as documentation or product content, more and more we're shifting to customer experience, and that means a better digital experience. Digital experience means delivery of content to all customer touch points. So instead of putting content there and expecting people to go and try to find it, what we're moving more and more to try to engage with customers and deliver that content on their terms, wherever our customers are coming to us and want to engage with us. That's where we need our content to be. So whether we're putting our content on our website or our documentation portal, customers are engaging with us through customer service. And the content needs to be available to the customer service reps. Through mobile applications, the content needs to be available, whether through your product is working in mobile apps, and through social media and communities. Customers are posting and asking questions and ratings about your content, about your products, and your content needs to be there also. So we want to make sure that as we're talking about in broadening the customer experience, we need to be broadening the digital experience to make sure we're delivering content, not just posting it, but delivering content wherever our customers are going to be interacting with us.
So if what Joe is describing is where we want to go, let's talk about where we are now. When content is the cost of doing business, it's never treated as a strategic asset. And the consequence of that is that there is very little effort to make that content findable. Here's how. Our thinking becomes so skewed that we really start to measure ourselves on how much content we produce within the budgetary constraints that we're given. And this drives us to produce an enormous amount, even a bewildering amount of content with no connection about how findable or useful that content is. And the user experience of that is that customers are searching for information on our sites, but they find it extremely difficult to find the answers to their questions. This particular situation was really identified quite humorously, actually, by a guy named Jerry McGovern, who spoke a couple of years ago and I saw in person. He wrote an article in 2009 about removing poor quality content. And he made this kind of astounding fact that is showed up here on your screen. Of the 10 million pages on Microsoft.com, more than 3 million had never been visited. I don't know if you can get your head around that number. 3 million pages, which he says is greater than the number of people that there are in Ireland, which I thought kind of funny. But it's also kind of tragic, isn't it, that you have here a group of people toiling away, producing content for which they're measured, and that content is never read. Now, you contrast that with the idea that content is now something that drives a better experience. If you're really competing on customer experience, then you start to undo sort of that twisted thinking about how content is only a cost center. Thinking about customer experience reframes content as a strategic asset that really starts to drive revenue. And here's how it goes. If the content is findable, then it's useful. Useful content leads to more engaged customers, who in turn have a stronger desire to purchase the products and the services that you offer. And that's what we're really trying to get to, the thinking that content is driving customer experience.
Right. So we've been talking about driving that customer experience and digital experience through content delivery. So there are many different ways that our customer are in phases where our customers are engaging with us. They're engaging with us in a pre-sales phase where they're discovering about our products, searching for that content or searching for content that's useful for them, to learn about your products, researching, comparing your products with other products, and eventually making a decision to buy. Then they purchase, hopefully, and they start using your products. They need to find content about how to use your products, helping set things up, for example, sharing content and personalizing that content. Then we want to bring them closer and closer into that loyal customer phase where they're evangelizing and sharing content and sharing facts about your product with their friends. Okay. Now, each of these different phases of our engagement with these customers have different ways that they're finding content, whether it be a website, mobile apps, call centers, social media, etc. What we've done is we've highlighted different areas of these different engagement phases where your content, where product content, can be critical to successfully engaging with the customer. So again, we're seeing that the content that you're creating, the product information, becomes more and more critical for many phases, successful phases of engaging with customers. And we see that there are many aspects or different touch points where in the digital experience where customers are engaging with us and need to find, and it's critical that they find that content. So a lot of folks are asking, so what's the difference between this digital experience thing and web CM, web content management? Meaning many websites or many companies have websites, and they're using tools called web content management systems to manage those websites. So if I'm taking my product content, what's the difference of just taking my product content and posting it or somehow getting it in some format, HTML format, to post it using WebCM? Why do I need this digital experience, and what's the difference? So there's been a move over the past number of years, a few years, from WCM or from web content management to digital experience management. So web content management centers, and these tools were created and are tuned for creating, editing, revising, approving, versioning, and then targeting and deploying that marketing content. Marketing content is generally based on pages, single pages that are in some kind of hierarchy, which drive the customer to learn in a very marketing or flashy way about the products. And these pages are built to be changed often and to be very targeted in what they're presenting on a website. Digital experience, on the other hand, is focused on emphasizing personalized access to information and applications that may exist in many places. Okay, so it's not just posting content. It's a matter of personalizing access to that information. Digital experience management is focusing on providing added value as a user experience platform. Okay, so if we're talking about customer experience, which ultimately means improving the user experience, then these digital experience management tools are focused on and adding value around the content as a user experience platform. Digital experience, or DXM, is focused on supporting heterogeneous environments. That means, like we spoke about before, there's many different ways that our customers are engaging with us, whether it be communities, through support centers, call centers, knowledge bases, more and more Internet of Things, Internet apps, or mobile apps. So DXM, digital experience, is focused on supporting all these different environments and integrating them rather than supplanting these systems in adjacent categories, which basically means instead of trying to plow down or expecting that different silos of content are going to disappear and be merged into one, then digital experience understands that there are different environments there and we need to integrate between them, integrate all these different types of content. And customer service, more and more in organizations, is requiring the ability to integrate, aggregate, and contextualize in a secure way this content that exists in many places. So in the past, where marketing organizations and IT organizations were the ones who were making the decisions around what goes up on the corporate website, more and more customer service, customer success people are requiring or demanding, really, that they have a say of the decisions about what content goes up, what tools are being used in order to post that content and provide an experience around that content.
So Mitch Joel explains why digital experience management is the evolutionary next step after web content management. And if you don't know who Mitch Joel is, let me phrase it this way. When Google wants someone to explain the latest developments in marketing to the top brands in the world, they bring Mitch Joel into the Googleplex in Mountain View, and he sort of lays it out for them. Marketing Magazine thinks of him as the rock star of digital marketing and one of North America's leading digital visionaries. So let's take a look at 3 attributes that he associates with the modern age of marketing. Something is indexable. That means the content has attributes that can be assimilated by a search engine. It's shareable. The distribution technology allows content consumers to redefine what distribution means because they can share it any way they want and through multiple avenues and channels. And finally, findable. This is sort of a revisit of a point that I made a couple of minutes ago. The attributes that we attach to content, which are indexed by the search engine, are the attributes that users employ when they look for content. And now we come to polling question number 2. Trey?
Yep, we are already running the polling question, and we have people answering right now. So the question is, do you curate your content with an eye toward findability? And the answers we've given are yes, not currently, but we hope to within 12 months, not now, but we hope to within 3 years, and not now and no plans within 3 years. And again, if you're watching the webinar in full screen, please go out of full screen so that you can participate and answer the polling question. And once you answer, you'll be able to actually see the dynamic changes of your fellow participants. So right now, Eric, we've got about 60% say that they're not currently, but they hope to within 12 months. And then we have another 40% that say that they are currently curating their content with an eye toward findability. So no one has said that they're not doing it but hope to within 3 years, and no one is saying that they are not going to do it at all.
So this is an interesting statistic here, Trey, because you had in the previous poll a total of about 70%. I think it was 38 and 32%. So that's 70% of the people who said that they were measuring themselves on their customer experience, but only 60%. But 60% of the people in this poll say that they're not yet curating content with an eye toward findability. So you're measuring yourself, but the measurements must not be right up there at the top yet, because currently we're not thinking about findability.
You are correct.
I think that's an interesting dichotomy to think about. And so what I want to do is talk about how you can get your content more curatable. So I want to focus initially here on indexable and shareable, especially with the idea of curation. Curation is kind of a new term. In 2010, no one said curation. It was being restricted solely to people who work in museums. But now, curation has really sort of taken on a much broader appeal. And we start to hear people saying, I'm curating content. I'm pulling things together. In fact, there's a download on this webinar that talks about curating content if you're interested in getting some more information about curation. Curation has a lot of different definitions and lots of different solutions. The little thing that over here on the right-hand side of your screen shows just a smattering of the companies, and there's more than 24 represented here, who are interested and talk about curation. I think that there's simply going to be more. One of the other things that we find out about curation as it sort of gets more discussed is that there's also emerging methodologies to talk about how to be successful in curation. And people come up with these elaborate descriptions and sequences. Here's a nice little 8-petal flower diagram. I think that curation, you could have whipped this out and written creation in 2010, and it would have been the same diagram, but they've updated it. And my personal favorite is this one that's back here. Let me just go back to this one. is the one that says, keep calm and curate, with the idea that there's really no idea of what curation is, but you should just keep doing it. But I want to focus on what it is that Mitch Joel was talking about, that curation has a very specific meaning in the context of indexable and findable information. And let me talk about that for a second. Curation is really about organizing content. There's a sequence sort of in play here. You collect content from across the organization, wherever your organization is, and you're tasked with sharing it across your user community. That's on the right-hand side. Curation is about adding information about the information you've collected in a really thoughtful, but more importantly, meaningful way, defensible way. Let me show you what I mean. So on the screen here is a picture of an object I think everyone will recognize. Think for a moment about its characteristics. The object it's a pen. The object is a marker. The object is a black marker. And it's a Sharpie as a model of that black marker. If I've chosen my attributes correctly, then I should be able to find a black Sharpie pretty quickly. So I tried this. I put in pen, marker, black, Sharpie into one of the world's most popular search engines, and this is what I got back. A picture and actually a way to buy a whole bunch of these black marker, pen, black marker, Sharpie things. And as you can see, I think I've got it just right. The attributes are now aligned with the way I intend to buy things. And so there's good alignment there. That's what curation is about. It's about adding meaning to objects that you already have. And all of these meanings can be understood by a search engine. And the addition of these meanings makes the object indexable. And if the attributes are chosen correctly, then these attributes make the object findable. That's the key thing, the thoughtful selection of attributes that aligns with the way in which customers are looking for content. That's what curation is. There are three functions in a component content management system that enable curation. So if you're keeping track at home, write these three things down, because this is how you evaluate whether or not your content management solution enables curation. And curation done properly enables findability. The first one, of course, is that the CCMS, or the content management system, ought to let you be thoughtful, careful, and deliberate about the corpus of attributes. Sounds like we're talking about dead bodies, but the collection of attributes in your repository. If your CCMS doesn't give you the tools and the interface to develop and manage your content attributes, then the CCMS is not really letting you curate content. You may spend all of your time adding attributes in your authoring interface, but you really need a central place that manages it across the entire range of content that's being authored among all the groups that are participating in the creation and editing of content. And that's the function of a component content management system. And if it doesn't have that function, then it's not really letting you curate content. The next function is that it should allow you to set a policy and a capability over how attributes are applied. Here's a little spaghetti diagram. You've got some general attributes on the right and some other attributes and objects on the left. And how are they connected? Well, the thoughtful ability to connect those appropriately is what curation is about. And curators need a way to ensure that these attributes are aligned with the content to avoid some sort of nonsensical pairings. You don't want to have the wrong attributes associated with those objects, because then when the user enters those attributes in search engines, you get the wrong kinds of results. So you have to be thoughtful and appropriate in the connection between your attributes and your objects. And the third function is that CCMS should let curators have full control over the way the content is exported to the distribution engine. If there's no filter, then everything can be exposed. And that's a recipe for accidental disclosure and frankly, embarrassment in the marketplace. So if curation is about adding meaning, then a component content management system must have the capabilities that allow curators to make objects indexable and findable. And frankly, that's what my company and our product does. It makes it gives the tools and the interface to let people manage content, gives curators the ability to set policy and employ capability over how attributes are applied, and it empowers curators with the full control over the export of the content to the distribution engine. Now, I spent a great deal of time talking about what a content management system should be able to do to enable curation. I'd like to give my colleague Joe Gelb a chance to talk a little bit more about improving the customer experience with this content that's now in the distribution engine. Joe, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Eric. So if we talk about how we can improve the customer experience via content, and specifically via that curated content, the tagged content, so there's different ways we can do that. Two ways are basically answers, meaning help people get things done as quickly as possible. People have come to your site or come to your various touch points with a question, and we need to get them the answer as quickly as possible. The second thing is to engage with the customers. We want to use that content as a way to engage with our customers and use that content as a lever, basically, for incentivizing them to to read that content and stay with us. Now, both of these seem like they might be contradictory, meaning on the one hand, we want people to be able to get answers and leave as quickly as possible and get their thing done. On the other hand, we want people to stay with us and discover more useful content and information and then engage with them. So there's really a fine line between, again, using that content to give them answers, but also providing useful and valuable reasons to continue engaging with us and using that content as a way to facilitate that engagement. So we talk about or drill down on what answering engaging means. So we have 6 basic parts. We have using search or SEO tactics or best in breed search engines and tactics to use that created content to double the right answers to the top of the search. We have personalization, which helps us to get answers and also to engage. So personalization allows us to people to personalize the content that they're getting or making sure they're getting the right content that's useful for them. We have the ability to collaborate, allowing our customers to collaborate with us, to give us feedback, maybe submit content to others that would be useful via community. Gamification, which are techniques which allows us to encourage our customers and readers to contribute and collaborate with us. Content updates, again, to engage with the customers or to increase the engagement, we want to be pushing out content updates. Again, we want to, not kind of go reel back from the cycle that a lot of companies have of, updating content only with a product release or every several months, by being able to make sure that useful content is being updated and made available in very quickly, sometimes even in real time. And recommendations, recommending other products and other content to people. And that really moves into what marketers call discovering or discoverability. Using searchable content and answers to recommend other content that might be useful, whether it be related discussions, related knowledge posts, or related support information, or related upgrades or products that other of your products that they might want to purchase or learn about. So if we talk about how this whole thing fits together, so we've been talking about digital experience and customer experience. So how does this all fit together with the curation and content management engine, and the delivery engine? So on the one hand, on the top, we have content that's being curated, often in a structured format, such as data. We have other content that may be unstructured content, legacy content, or other types of content that is product content, useful content. All that feeds into what we call formal product content, as opposed to marketing content. Okay, and this formal product content often has, as you all know, has a certain level of complexity, has a certain usually large volumes, and also it has a long tail. Meaning this content is content that's going to stick around for a long time and continues to provide value to customers over long periods of time. Now, once you're able to pour your content into a content hub or a digital experience management hub, then that allows you to make that content available in the various touch points we spoke about, whether it means publishing your content to a documentation portal, meaning someone comes to your site and says, I want documentation about how to use a certain feature or how to perform a certain task. You're also able to allow that formal product content to be available in customer communities, in knowledge-based systems, as well as call centers. So when support representatives are using tools such as CRM to handle cases and to answer questions for customers to call or email or Twitter or whatever have you, making sure your product content is available to them using the same searchability and SEO tactics that we're talking about before. And again, more and more we're going to be talking about Internet of Things, where folks aren't even going to your site. They're expecting content or proactive content to be pushed to them. Okay, so there's the idea of how content gets pushed into a content or a DXM hub, and that allows you to get that content available in multiple touch points. Now, we spoke about the different types of touch points. First of all, for example, customer community touch points. There's different platforms such as Jive, Lithium, Salesforce, knowledge-based call center. These are different platforms that specializes in either discussions or specializes in knowledge-based article management and workflows, and specializes in call center efficiencies. Okay, and the idea here is that you want to make sure your product content is available in all of these different platforms through connectors with a DXM, with a digital experience management, and as well you want to make the content in those various silos, as it may be, available in your documentation portal, for example. So if someone comes to your doc portal and says, I see a topic about a certain task, I want to be able to see the relevant content in the community, et cetera. And that's what we were talking about before, early in the presentation, about how DXM, digital experience management, differentiates from web content management because it gives you a much more comprehensive and heterogeneous view of different types of content. Now, if we focus on answers, okay, so people are generally coming to you with a role, a goal, and a context. They have a particular role in their organization. They have a goal, something they're trying to do, and they have a context, a certain product, a certain version, a certain configuration, whatever it's going to be. Okay, and they, no matter what touch point they're coming from, we want to be able to, as much as possible, just use what we know about them, whatever we do know about them, maybe preferences, maybe we already know what they've purchased, maybe we know where they live or where they're coming to us from, geographical location, all these different types of parameters. And we want to be able to distinguish between different types of of content, again, based on that curation that we've spoken about, that Eric was talking about before. So, number one, we want to keep that, restricted information away from them. Let's say they come to our public site and they haven't purchased anything yet. Maybe there's certain content we want to hide from them. There's content that maybe is not hidden, but it's just not useful. So we want to push that down on the search results. We want to do as quickly as possible is hone in on that most relevant information, and that's really where the curation and the tool set really come together to provide the best customer experience, as we've been speaking about. So if we sum up what the Digital Experience Management Content Hub does, it allows us to facilitate classification, or that quote-unquote tagging or curation of the content, okay, and use that classification for faceted and full-text search. Okay, and that enables us to get that, hone in on the most relevant information as quickly as possible. SEO enablement, authentication, and entitlements, meaning not all content should be available to the public. We want to make sure we're authenticating people. We want to make sure that we're applying entitlements, that whether they're understanding whether they're a customer, an internal person, a partner, a support person, whatever have you, and getting them the right content, not only maybe from a restriction point of view, but also what's most relevant to them. DXM allows the personalization we've spoken about on content recommendation, is discoverability of other content that we have in our web, in our website and other types of web assets. Content updates. The DXM allows us to push content updates and allows people to subscribe to content updates. The platform allows us to use those gamification techniques to encourage collaboration and encourage that engagement. All that boils down to usage analytics and gaining useful information and business value for how people are accessing and using our content. And that all points to and is driven by this cross-touchpoint enrichment that we've been speaking about up until now. Now, to go one step further, as we kind of start to wrap up the ideas in this presentation. So if we go to the next steps, so we talk a lot about websites and communities and support portals, but more and more we're seeing that customers are expecting, and the technology is enabling us to push proactive content to our customers via mobile apps, for example. So let's look at a scenario where, on the one hand, on the top left, you can be creating all kinds of different information, for example, troubleshooting content. Someone's bought a product or they're evaluating a product and they have a question or a problem, okay? And so you're creating all kinds of troubleshooting topics, and that topics may be coded in structured formats such as data, may be saved in or managed inside your content management, your CCMS, for example. That content gets uploaded or published into the documentation hub. On the other side of the coin, we have the actual product, which more and more these products in Internet of Things type of framework, they understand their environment. They're able to express their parameters about them, maybe the type of product, the version, the firmware, the state, the environmental condition, all kinds of things that these devices, whether it be physical devices or hardware, knows about itself, and it's able to communicate communicate this to an app. Now, once this device or software, for example, is able to communicate its status to an app, the app can go ahead and use these the semantics of the curated content to go ahead and pull at the most relevant content. So, for example, we know the product, we know the version, we know the error code, for example, maybe the firmware, what type of audience is actually, who's trying to access this. We know all these type of things. All these parameters can help us to really either push proactive information to the app, to the user, or pull the most relevant content, again, based on these semantics. Okay? So that's how the semantics and the curated content come together to, as the asset inside of your documentation hub, which, documentation hub is sitting there not only to deliver content to your website and to support portals, but also is there to push content proactively to mobile apps. Okay, so how do you measure happiness? We've been talking about customer experience. Okay, it sounds very, to us in the documentation or the product content field, that might sound a little bit nebulous, and we kind of talk about metrics or analytics. But there's people in your organization who really know how to measure happiness. That's their job, and that's their experience and their expertise. So there's different ways you can measure happiness, turns out. There's customer satisfaction scores. Okay, for example, how would you rate the overall satisfaction with service? Customer effort, which you want to, reduce the amount of effort. How much effort did you personally have to put forth, for example? And there's a net promoter score, for example. How likely are you to recommend? These are different scores that there's people in your company who understand how to measure these, and they understand that there are industry standards and that they can compare themselves. They can compare your company with other companies in your space about how you're measuring your customer effort and customer experience, customer satisfaction, and net promoter scores, and they know how even small changes in these scores can affect revenues and affect costs. Okay, so there's people in your company who this is what they think about all day. Okay, and this is what they're being measured on, about how they can increase satisfaction, reduce customer effort, and how that affects the organization in a very tangible and monetized way. Okay, so the next steps, wait for this slide to move over. The next steps let me click on it again. Okay, so the next step is thinking about the path forward, where your product content can meet customer experience. Okay, so the challenging for companies or in your marketing organization or folks in your marketing organization is how to merge the short-term outlook of the marketing campaigns with, let me go back one. Merging the short-term outlook of marketing campaigns with the long-tail value of that formal curated product content that we've been speaking about. Okay, so the marketing people are looking to make use of marketing campaigns, and they're looking for more ways of leveraging your content. They're looking for more opportunities for engagement of discovering, of allowing people to discover more of their marketing content and creating more upsell opportunities. Okay? The challenge for customer experience people in your company is to reduce that customer effort and to increase customer satisfaction. Okay, and that's really where your content meets the whole customer experience and where it meets marketing. So curated content plus the right tools, the digital experience portal, equals better customer experience, which increases revenues, and reduces the customer effort, which basically means reducing costs. So, going forward, the idea is to find these people in your organization and, and collaborate with them about how you can they can use your product content to meet their goals. Now we'll turn it over to a polling question. I'll turn it back over to Trey.
Okay. I've already opened the polling question for people so they can answer. This is if you're interested in getting more information about either Astoria Software or Zoomin Software. You can let us know here if you'd like to receive a call, or maybe if you want to receive a call but you're not sure if you're the right person to call, or not now, or no thank you. Also, remember that you can go anytime to either AstoriaSoftware.com or ZoominSoftware.com, and you can request a demo directly on those websites. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you, Eric.
Thanks very much, Trey. And I think we have come to a point where we should be able to entertain some questions. But as we do, I want to thank all of you, first of all, for hanging with us for the last 46 minutes as we've covered. Trey, I see three really good questions if you want to walk us through them.
Actually, we've got a whole process for doing that, Eric. So I will let Val Swisher take over for us. Val's going to ask the first couple questions, and then I'm going to jump in with some from the Twitterverse as well as the ones that are in the questions queue. And to the audience members who have yet to leave a question, you can use the questions button to input a text-based question, which we'll try to get to before the end of the show. Val, I know you've got questions. Kick us off.
I've got questions. So thanks, guys. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Eric. This was really fabulous. I have a couple of questions of my own, and we are getting more audience questions as well. So let me just start by asking a couple of things about curation. My first question is, how do you choose the attributes for an object? Are there best practices for that?
I'll start off, and Joe, you can chime in. I think in part you have to know what the search criteria really are, and this is one of the key things that I'm not sure that we always measure. You should have a way of collecting what the search criteria are that people use when they go through your content. If you're using a Google search appliance or some other kind of way of tracking what search attributes brought them to your particular page, I think you need that information. I think you also need to know whether you have to know whether the person liked the page that they got once they entered the search criteria. So you need to know what the criteria is, and you need to know how the person felt about that page. So you need some sort of feedback mechanism. If you correlate those two things, then you're going to get from that a set of search attributes that correlate strongly with something that the people liked. And then you know that the objects on that page or the concepts that are on that page were findable, and therefore you can start to use those attributes.
Right. I would add to that. Thanks, Eric. I would add to that, going back to one of the things I mentioned before, that folks are generally coming to you with a role, goal, and context. They have a role in their company or as an individual. They have a goal and they have a context, and you can kind of break those down into, based on user analysis or scenarios, like if someone had a certain question and they had a certain role, goal, and context, how would they be framing a question to go and find that content? Okay, and that kind of helps to that role, goal, and context helps to break down into attributes that you would build into a taxonomy, which are basically a set of tags that you would use to drive a faceted search and a keyword type of mechanism for people to find that content.
Great. Thank you. And another question that came in from the audience ties right into this. we might have already answered it, but maybe we want to expound a little bit. And that's how would analytics be part of this process? This particular viewer says they use Google Analytics as one way to evaluate their content. Are there different ways to use analytics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, there's definitely lots of ways of using analytics. So analytics tells us a number of things. Number one, it tells us, how often or which pages are being viewed and with frequency. It also tells us, how people are getting to those pages, but it also tells us, germane to what we're just talking about now, what people are searching on, and whether those search terms resulted in results. And sometimes more interesting is which search terms did not result did not find any results, and that kind of goes back to what Eric was saying. It helps us to fine-tune the tagging. So the analytics definitely helps us in those two ways. It also helps us to find out, listen, whatever pages are most useful, helps us to understand like which of our products are maybe more popular, or maybe which issues people are having problems, having problems with, or maybe certain tasks people are using frequently, or maybe things that certain people are having a hard time using. So the analytics is definitely very helpful in helping us to go back and curate the content, make the content better. And that's really kind of feeds into one of the business benefits of digital experience management.
If I may add just a point on analytics, analytics serve as a proxy for how people feel about the content, as Joe described. One of the things you need to do is to remove the proxy aspect of that piece by getting the real feedback about how they felt about the page that they were viewing. And that's why I recommend putting pieces of information on the page where the person can rate the content, because as you have the information generated by the analytic capability, you also need to know whether or not the person actually felt any good about it. They may have lingered on the page, and may have stayed on the page for reasons unrelated to whether or not that content was actually addressing a question that they had. So you need to connect the data that Google Analytics generates with some sentiment information that only the user can generate, and that's where either the scalar or freeform comment thing that appears at the bottom of most of our search pages these days really comes into play.
Right, and that feeds into the customer effort scores and the customer satisfaction scores we were talking about before, which are measurable, and those are things that people in customer experience and customer satisfaction parts of your company, that's what they really care to see.
I'd like to play devil's advocate here for a second and say, who cares about what people like? And they have absolutely there's no reason for them to do that. In fact, I go all the time and find answers and don't bother to tell people I found the right answer. I figure if I found it and I didn't call them, they should know. Which begs the question, should we be marrying scores with analytics? I'll give you a great example. In a CCMS, you can add metadata to topics that you might have authored in an XML authoring system, and that metadata can include all kinds of things. For example, you could include a content quality score provided by a terminology or a content quality management system like Acrolinks, for example, on a topic. Then you could correlate your analytics, which pieces of content best performed in the way that we set up our goals, the way that Joe discussed earlier, and then did they correlate, did a score, in other words, did high-quality content happen to outscore content that was not scored in that way? And if so, what's this mean for us as we start to manage this kind of metadata plus analytics?
Yes, it's a good question. We have customers who are feeding all this information, or a lot of information that you mentioned, into charts, and very interesting, bringing this customer satisfaction. And what I think what they found, or some of them found in particular, kind of like what you said, Scott, a lot of people, often people who leave ratings, often they're negative, okay?
Correct.
Most people don't, like you said, most people won't bother to leave a positive thing unless there's, a particular type of person. Then most people are going to complain and not, so trying to make, does that mean all your content stinks? No, it doesn't mean that. So you're kind of trying to figure out, that, yeah, people are hitting pages, but only maybe very few of those pages actually get comments is probably maybe a good thing.
There was an interesting study conducted some years ago, more than a decade ago, that rated, and here in the United States we're in the middle of a political battle, so this just seems apropos, They rated the truthfulness of negative campaign information and positive campaign information, and found that negative campaign information actually had a higher truth rating than the positive stuff. And perhaps that's not surprising. The lesson to be drawn, I think, from that is that even if people are only supplying negative information, negative rating, the likelihood is that that is truthful. There was some disappointment. The value of their, or the level of their disappointment may vary from individual to individual, but there was some truth, some value in, and something was wrong.
That's a very good point, and I think I would agree with you there. Val, do you have another question?
Yeah.
And I've got one follow-up as well.
Yeah, actually, I've got a really great one from the audience here. Any thoughts on curating content from multiple sources? For example, if we're looking at having one portal for, quote, one source of truth, but we're crowdsourcing content from multiple sources outside of CCMS, are there best practices for doing that?
I had the advantage of reading this question as just before, while Joe was talking, and I have to say it's a pretty difficult one. I'll happily start off with one thought while Joe is formulating his, because I think he's going to have a very good answer. My personal feeling here is that the multi-source curation concept is in its earliest stages, and that a body of best practices has yet to be distilled. I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is that where possible, multi-sourced content ought to come to a single place where you can have a common set of curation rules, practices that you develop for your organization. And to the degree that you can bring these materials together so that you can have these common rules in a play, you should attempt to do that. That's my feeling. Until we figure out, until the technology improves, that you can have more effective way of distributing common rules across lots of different sources in a multi-source scenario, as you described, I think a single platform seems to me to be the best way to get to it. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree that's a difficult question. I think it's difficult things, but it's going to become more and more important. I think that a lot of this content, in effect, is being general. Like you said, it's coming from multiple sources. So even though we're presenting it in one single source, one portal, let's say, it's really coming from multiple sources. So the people who are creating content in a support knowledge base, those are support people, and people, they have often their own ways of judging and curating and reviewing the content. Content coming from documentation has its own. Content that's coming from communities often has its own way of policing itself and policies, and usually it's a little bit more liberal. But what I think I would agree that software such as actual links and things like this we spoke about before do provide a way to try to provide some kind of overall rules across all the different types of content to make sure when it does get delivered, it's there's certain types of overall rules or language or whatever that can be applied.
Excellent. And while I have another question, I'm afraid we're out of time, so I will save that to our next adventure, which I know we'll have in the near future. So I'd like to speak on behalf of both Val and I and say congratulations to the winners, Cecilia, Francine, Patricia, Kenneth, and Anne. You all receive a copy of the author experience from the Content Wrangler XML series of books on content strategy, this one authored by Rick Yagodich. So you'll get a copy of that in an email. Thanks so much, Joe, for joining us today, and thank you also, Eric Kuhnen. I know Val and I both appreciate your time today.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much for having us.
And thanks to our sponsors, Zoomin and Astoria. You can learn more about Zoomin Software at zoominsoftware.com, and the same, you can learn more about Astoria at astoriasoftware.com, and I encourage you to do that, and also to leave some feedback for the presenters to let them know about the quality of the content they provided today using the scoring system on your webinar viewing panel, 1 star being low, 5 being high. Don't forget to download the attachments and visit the links, and also to watch the recording, which you can do at the same URL you're using to watch the show. Val, would you like to say goodbye to everybody as well?
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody. All right. Thanks,
you.
gentlemen. Thank you, everyone. And you've been watching Answers in Engagement, Digital Experience Management from Curation to Delivery. And join us for our upcoming webinars. We've got a whole series of them, probably 30 more before the end of the year. If you've got a great topic or something you'd like us to cover or an expert that you'd like us to invite to the show, please let us know by sending an email to scott@thecontentwrangler.com. Until next time, do good work. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.